He's even received, I don't know if this is done in the West, but Japanese fans will attach a razor blade to the inside of an envelope so that when you open it up, you cut yourself. And he's received that in the past.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so obviously Hirata-san has made a lot of games over the years, but with Tekken he's dedicated 20 years of his life to it, which effectively is like raising a child to adulthood, you know. I was just wondering, what were some of his most favourite moments of raising Tekken?
まあもう一人育てるなんだから
本当だよね。
一番ね楽し
We said
かったと
maybe when he was younger, you know, now he's older and he has more experience in the company and more authority, I guess you could say, as far as organization-wise. But his most favorite moments were probably when he was young. He didn't have much authority yet, but he was able to do to work more directly on the game. For example, to actually do the scripting that controls the character animation and such. So, although as a game designer, you can you give these directives to the programmers and the artists to create these assets, but with the script, he was able to take those assets and kind of control the characters, animations, and such. And that was probably the most enjoyable moment throughout the series.
Okay. Fair enough. And every parent also, I imagine, has regrets. Is there anything he would have done differently, perhaps?
Taking wait. Well, you said that throughout the series he always has kind of small regrets about various different design choices, etc. But different from parroting, the mistakes made are actually quite important a lot of times, such as with Tekken 4. Although the game, you know, it sold pretty well, the overall consensus among the fan base was that it was one of the not so favorite games in the series. So the amount of things learned from that and applied later on to the series. And also it's even one of the first, for example, times that 3D coordinates actually existed in the game. So that it's always been a 3D fighter, but the actual way the program handled it, that was one of the first things implemented from Tekken 4. So although it wasn't very well received, it was a very important piece of the history of the franchise.
I also wanted to know, you finally revealed more about Kazumi. It must feel good to get that lore out there, especially since, I mean, the last thing we really heard about her was like Tekken 2, like her name was written on a floorboard all the way back. Does it feel good to take that thread from all those years ago and bring it back?
Well, it is kind of a story arc that we've left hanging for, you know, so long. As you mentioned, Tekken 2 was that kind of portion was shown, but the overall story and the setting and background and such was decided pretty much 15 years ago. So it's taken such a long time to actually get her out there in public view, and I guess it is kind of relieving, I guess you could say, to finally be able to show this portion to the fans more directly.
Okay, so once upon a time I went to Treyarch, who do Call of Duty.
We've been there, actually.
You have? Yeah. They're a great team, really nice guys. I was speaking with, I forget his first name, last name is Van der Haar, but he handles multiplayer specific. And as I was having a chat with him, he was sort of lamenting that whenever he changed something multiplayer-wise, because they had such a rabid fan base, he would get negative reactions. Now, with him, that went to the extreme. He actually got death threats and all of that. Now, obviously, you guys also have a rabid fan base, and you tweak things a lot. Has it ever gotten that bad?
It's kind of different. Well, similar and different at the same time, I guess you could say, because the online multiplayer aspect of their series, it's similar to fighting games in Tekken, in that if the game balance changes and it's something that you're not a fan of, then you get killed often or something like that. And you tend to see that as the developer's fault, and you can get quite angry at that. And that kind of translates to fighting games and Tekken as well, but the major difference is that the fighting games, the characters are more important to the fans, I guess, so it's almost like a character game. So there's that competitive element that the fans might be unhappy with, but then there's also in relation to their favorite character that they kind of see as an extension of themselves, or almost like a girlfriend type of thing that they like. There's a lot more hatred to us sometimes because of that aspect. For example, if the fan perceives that we're not treating the characters with enough respect that they think is deemed, and that's not done intentionally, that's just the way that they interpret it a lot of times, or things like that. Sometimes we can get a lot of negative feedback. He's even received, I don't know if this is done in the West, but Japanese fans will attach a razor blade to the inside of an envelope so that when you open it up you cut yourself. And he's received that in the past.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, speaking of sort of nerfing characters, sometimes it's a good thing. Eddie Gordo coming back, which among my friends and people I know sort of see him as the person you pick and mash to win. He doesn't seem that way this time around. I'm just wondering, how much have you reined in his helicopter legs of death?
Eddie Gordo, well, in fighting games in general, people say that they've gotten easier or etc., but or more difficult or nerfed or whatever. But the direction is that we change the game balance and elements depending on the fan base and how much they're able to progress through the game system and how good they've gotten at the game, etc. So, for example, one complaint he hears often is that games were much more difficult, fighting games back in the day or whatever, but or they're more difficult now, or there's many differing opinions. But it's just that fighting games have always been kind of complex, but it's just that people have had so much time with the more famous franchises that the player, I guess you could say the community skill level as a whole has increased over the 10, 20 years that they've been playing fighting games. And the same thing can be said with Eddie, that when he first came out, and we designed characters a lot of times intentionally that you can button mash and have a certain amount of fun with the game. That's just made to be more accessible, but people say he's a button mash character, etc. And if they're not saying that now, then it's probably just that the same thing that we just mentioned, that people have had more time with him over the years, that the community's had more time to learn how to defeat Eddie, so that it's not that we've made him weaker or more balanced, it's just that he's more well known on how, strategies and such, more than anything that we've done to the character.
Now, Harada-san tweeted something. It was roughly 24 hours ago. It was, okay, tell me your best character idea. I figured I could tweet back, or I could just wait and say it in front of him and see how his poker face is. I've got two.
He's got sunglasses.
Oh no, it's going to be very difficult. But the two I had, dream characters for me, would be Kiryu Kazama from Yakuza.
A lot of people have seen that.
Yeah, would be good. And his, I guess you could almost say, spiritual brother in terms of gameplay, Ryo Hazuki from Shenmue.
Shenmue, yeah.
Right,
I think
right.
it'd be a good fit as well. So,
Interesting.
it's good. I couldn't see any emotion there.
ちょっと知りたいんですよね。
You're saying that Shenmue is not that surprising because it's a game that sold really well in the West and has quite a following, but he's surprised to hear Kiryu because I think they call it Yakuza in the West, right?
Yeah.
Is not something that was very big. I think more recently they started to localize them and put more installments out. But is that a character that's really well known now?
I think so, yeah.
I'm a fan of the series, so I'm biased.
やっぱり日本人の悪い日本人のイメージが和也とか桐生一馬とかちょっとみんな似てるんだろうね、なんかああいうイメージなんだ。
And also, it's kind of similar. Oh, he thinks that the Western's version of Japanese who's like a badass. You know, because Kazuya is pretty much the similar thing. But
That's true.
But I think I played both series. I think it's a little bit different because Kazuya is just merely evil, where Kiryu's got that certain code.
He's like a necessary
Yes, yes, yes,
evil.
yes.
He has things that he wouldn't do, right? You know?
Exactly, yeah.